In this session, I'm joined by fellow MVP Peter Rising, who's going to take us through everything that you need to know about premium eDiscovery in Microsoft Purview. And I guarantee you will learn something here. Greetings fellow YouTubers, welcome back to the channel. Andy here, Microsoft MVP. So nice to see you joining us again. Now, this time I've got a very special guest, Peter Rising, who is not only a fellow MVP, but also hosts YouTube's Cloud Conversations. And if you've not seen that channel, definitely go and check it out. He's got some fantastic guests as well as some great tech content, and you can find that just here. Now, today Peter is going to talk about premium eDiscovery in Microsoft 365 and Microsoft Purview, which, to be honest, has been going through a large number of changes recently, and it's definitely worth knowing. So in terms of the session, this is very much a deep dive into eDiscovery, and we're going to talk about exactly what it is and exactly how it works. So if you're preparing for an exam, or indeed you just need to learn this for your job, I guarantee this is going to be something you definitely want to stick around for. It's an awesome demo. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce my guest today, fellow MVP and host of Cloud Conversations, Peter Rising. Peter, good afternoon. How are you?
Hi, Andy. I'm really well. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you on the show today. I'm really happy to be here.
Absolute pleasure. Now, just tell us a little bit about yourself, Peter. So what's your background and what do you do?
All right. So I've been working in IT for longer than I care to remember, a good 35 plus years, starting out in the early to mid 90s. And spent most of those years bouncing around between IT solutions providers and manufacturing companies, but in more recent years got into the security and compliance and identity side of things, which is where I sit now.
Awesome, awesome. And you have a YouTube channel at the moment, Cloud Conversations, which I gotta say is a fantastic channel. So again, for those folks who have not heard of it, I'll link to that in the description, and I'll also put a card up there. So definitely go ahead and click on that to have a look. But it's quite unique, isn't it? It's not, I don't think I've ever seen a channel like it. So I have a feeling that a number of people are going to take a look at this and go, wow, this is really quite unique. Tell us all about it. Tell us how did Cloud Conversations come about, and what kind of channel is it?
Okay, yeah. So we're very proud of Cloud Conversations, and when I say we have a team of 5 of us in total that contribute to Cloud Conversations, and we founded it, myself and a fellow MVP who I know you know very well, Rue Campbell, a very great guy and very dear friend. We founded it in early 2021 because we wanted to do something on YouTube, and it's on podcast platforms as well, where we talk about what's current in the world of tech, specifically M365 and Azure AD, and get guests on to share their experience in certain fields, but also get to know the person behind the tech story as well, to get them to talk about subjects that mean a lot to them, that they're passionate about. So we get to hear life stories, we get to hear about challenges and struggles that they may have encountered in their life. And people can talk about whatever they want to talk about, depending on how comfortable they are. But we're very passionate about promoting things like mental health and well-being. In addition to talking about tech, we are very, very huge supporters of women in the tech industry. And with that in mind, after we initially set up the channel, we added 3 more permanent co-hosts to the show who are all female. So Rue and I are outnumbered now.
Absolutely fantastic. Yeah. All right. So like I said, definitely check out Peter's Cloud Conversations channel on YouTube, and it's also a podcast on Spotify and
Apple Podcasts as well.
Apple Podcasts. So yeah, definitely. And we'll put the links underneath there. Now, today we are going to be talking about eDiscovery, as I said. So tell us a little bit about what is eDiscovery, and as a business, why is it important to me?
So an eDiscovery case in Microsoft 365 can be used for things like legal searches, internal investigations, all sorts of different things. And these are very, very important for organizations to be aware of, because if you are hosting data on Microsoft 365 or beyond, then you're responsible for that data, and you are obliged to respond to certain investigations and requests for information under all sorts of legislation and provide responses to that.
Absolutely. And there's a couple of versions of eDiscovery. There's like a basic version,
Mm.
and there's also the premium version as well. And there is quite a difference between them, isn't there?
A massive difference, yes. So with the eDiscovery standard version, as it's now called, you can conduct searches, you can export the results, you can create cases, and you can put items on hold. So that's very, very basic in comparison to what is now called eDiscovery Premium, which is what we're going to have a little look at in a few moments, which is an entirely different animal. It's a massive workflow tool which has all sorts of capabilities built into it to uh, set up custodians and apply all sorts of intelligent stuff to export results and get the content you need, so you can annotate it and redact it and do all sorts of amazing things with it.
Cool. And you're going to give us some demo, I believe.
I certainly am, yes. So
Awesome.
let's take a look. So I'm in my Microsoft 365 tenant. I'm in the Microsoft Purview Compliance Center, and Purview being the umbrella term for all things compliance. And eDiscovery lives within Microsoft Purview down here on the left, as you can see. And you can see, as you already said there, Andy, there's the standard version in there. But the version we're interested in, which has all of the bells and whistles, is this eDiscovery Premium tool. And I have gone ahead and created a eDiscovery case already, which I will go back to the very start and show you where that is. When you go into eDiscovery Premium, you get a quick overview of your cases, and you can see all of your cases here. And I have one here entitled Mark 8 Investigation, which is active. We can see all this information about when it was created and last modified and the last modified date. And if I go into that case, initially you will see that this can look quite overwhelming to people when they're going into it for the first time. But once you get the hang of it, once you get your head around it, it's actually very, very intuitive and quite simple. When you go in, you get this nice overview page to get a quick sort of helicopter view of what is happening with your case, how many custodians there are, and how you've communicated with those custodians. And when we're talking about custodians, we're actually talking about users within Microsoft 365. When you create a case, data sources can be custodial or more wider in terms of data locations. And as you can see here, the custodians that I've set up for the case are real people names. So we've got Adele here and Megan and Nestor, but we've also got some SharePoint locations there as data locations as well. And when you add a data source, you have the opportunity to put the content that matches that onto a hold, which is very important that you do that, because you want that content to be retained for the duration of your eDiscovery search. Now, I say a search, but the real sort of magic happens within collections, which those of you who've used this tool before might remember that it was called search previously, but it's now called collections. And you can create in here within a case as many collections as you want. I mean, I'm sure there is an upper limit, but I've got some examples in here of some collections. And just for the purposes of demonstrating one of the more recent additions to eDiscovery that I like, I'm just going to show you how that looks when you collect this information and then you review it in what's called a review set. So just very, very quickly, before we do that, I'll start with this one here that I've prepared earlier, which is a new collection or a new search, and I haven't committed this yet, really. It's if I go into my search, I can now commit this to the review set. So how we get to this point where we have a review set in position is we can go to our actions and we can commit that collection. And we have the opportunity here, lots of things we can do. We can create a new review set, or we can add it to an existing review set. And the real magic that I want to show, one of the more recent features of eDiscovery Premium, is that you can collect all versions of SharePoint items. So you may or not be familiar with versioning in SharePoint Online, in that when you autosave your Word documents or whatever else, it's going to autosave. And when it's doing that, it's creating a version history. So this is going to collect all those versions. But be mindful that this does significantly increase the volume of items that are added to your review set. So we can go ahead and commit that now after we've put all our selections in here as well. What I'll do is I'll show you the differences between those two results. So we've got our review sets here. Once a collection is committed, it will go ahead and it will put all the results into the review set, depending on the criteria you've searched for. And then you can go into these and review the content. So the first one that I did in this particular example on tier 3 review set, and tier 4 is what we're going to look at, is I did a search for specific content for a team called Mark 8, which if you have access to demo tenants, you'll probably be familiar with some of this content. The reason for the tier 1 and tier 2 is that I had to do another search to specifically add in this add slogans content here. Tier 2, I've got one more file in there, and that's because it's added the additional version in that I can present in terms of that search. This is only the tip of the iceberg, but this is a more recent feature of eDiscovery Premium that I really love. So when you go into your review set, if you configure it so to return all the versions, you can see all those different versions and the different timestamps that are on them. I'm a talker, so
Well, that's absolutely fine. And I was going to say, I assume not everyone in the organization would have access to this tool, because this is a pretty darn powerful tool. And obviously, there would be concerns about privacy here as well.
Exactly, yes. So that is entirely correct. So to get access to eDiscovery in any way, shape, or form, you need to be an eDiscovery, having a specific eDiscovery role, which is a Microsoft Purview role. It's not an Azure Active Directory role, like a global administrator or a billing administrator or one of the more the broader roles. It's a Microsoft Purview role. And there are two parts to it. You can be an eDiscovery manager, and an eDiscovery manager has access only to the cases that they create, or you can be an eDiscovery administrator, and an eDiscovery admin, has access to all the cases that are created. So there's been lots of new features added to eDiscovery Premium. They're adding features to this all of the time. This is one of my more recent favorites, the ability to search on versioning, which is so powerful. And there's lots more to come as well. And the way that I find out about what's coming within eDiscovery is to consult the ever old faithful Microsoft 365 roadmap. If you're working with Microsoft 365 in any sort of admin capacity, or you're interested in it, you should have this site bookmarked, because it is so useful.
I was going to mention, Peter, is there a difference in price and in licensing from the standard to the basic edition?
Very much so, yes. So with eDiscovery Premium, the top level that we are looking at and talking about here, you need to have some flavor of E5 licensing. You need Microsoft 365 E5, or you need one of those add-ons that you can get, such as the security compliance add-ons. There's various different ways to get to there. So if you don't have one of those add-ons to your E3, or you don't have the full E5, and you're on that E3, then you're going to be limited to using eDiscovery Standard, which is good, but is not as good as this.
From experience, I tend to find that if you've got eDiscovery Standard, it's fine if you're a smaller business. It's also pretty useful for kind of an internal investigation. But if it's a more formal investigation and for a much larger company, then this is definitely the place to go. Just while Peter's on this screen, by the way, definitely sign up or make sure that, as Peter says, that you bookmark the 365 roadmap. There's nothing worse than just walking into work one day, switching on your screen, and you're hit with a new look or a new tool or a new feature, and you have no idea what it is. It makes you look unprofessional. Whereas if you have an idea of what's coming, then you're ready for it. You can learn it, you can read it. And the chances are many of these preview features are probably available, and the documentation is available on learn.microsoft.com as well.
Oh, totally agree, Andy. Absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned learn.microsoft.com because as you're going through Microsoft Purview eDiscovery Premium and anything in the Compliance Center, really, you're going to see these links which are going to take you right into that Learn documentation. And the content in there is so, so good. I cannot overemphasize that. You can learn so much from that content. So when you're doing your collections and getting them into review sets, you'll see here that I've got a number of passes at that. I've got my tier 1 to tier 4 review sets in my collections. I've got the same. And when you're starting to use eDiscovery Premium, you'll find that when you're starting to play with it, you'll need to go through this process because your first sort of query text that you put in might not get all of the results you want. So you'll have to do a few more passes at that before you get the results you want, because a collection, once that's been run, you cannot rerun that. You can copy the collection to another collection, which is what I've done here, and then commit that to a review set. But as you get more adept at looking for the content that you want to identify, you'll find that you're probably going through less stages of this sort of thing. And also a little tip as well, get stuck into custom query language. Yeah, review sets are the results of your search or the results of your collections. When you've run your collections, you commit them to a review set and you can open up your review set and see the results. You can see the number of items that have been returned. In this example, we have 71 items and we can see a mix of results here. We can see some Excel documents, some emails, we can see some PowerPoint and all sorts of other stuff. We can view this by page. Or if we want, we can go into the settings here and we can turn the pagination off and we can see a longer list. That's a fairly recent addition to this, actually. That's only recently been added. So the filters are all important and we can filter by keyword. And we can filter by date and date range, and the sender or author. And what it will do is it will present to you these items here, and then it'll make that view simpler for you. And what's so great about the filters actually as well, if you're going to be in this area for quite some time, you can save this as a query. Save that query there, give it a filter name, and we'll just call that filter 1 inventively, but give it a more descriptive filter name, obviously, if this was a real eDiscovery case. And once you've done that, you'll be able to see that in your saved filter queries there, and you can get back to that very, very easily.
And I was going to just mention here as well that when you click onto one of those items, you actually get that preview as well on the right hand side there as well, and
Indeed.
that's really important so that you understand that, you know, if you have concerns about privacy, the whole point about eDiscovery, of course, is you're gathering evidence. And you want to be able to find that evidence as quickly as possible. You want to review that evidence. And you also, we need to, the idea is that if it does go legal, then we need to basically gather that evidence so that we can reproduce it in a court of law.
Okay, so lots of amazing stuff that you can do in the review set. But equally important to an eDiscovery premium case is the ability to communicate with your custodians. So if we go back into our actual case and into the top level of our case, we can see here a communications tab. So what we can do is we can issue a set of communications to the custodians for the duration of the case. Now, before you can actually do this, you need to be setting up some templates that will allow you to do so. And you do that from within the core eDiscovery settings. So I'll just quickly show you that if we go back into the main eDiscovery, and you'll see the eDiscovery Premium settings page here. And there is a small amount of items in here that you can activate. Well, I'll briefly describe some of them. The attorney-client privilege detection is one that you can toggle to on, so you can detect a content that is going to be considered as attorney-client privileged within eDiscovery searches, and you can upload your own up-to-date attorney list as part of that. But what we're interested in here is our communication library, and we can go in and create some templates which will enable us to communicate with our users. So what we can do is we can put in, I'll just put in new templates. Inventively, you would give it a more descriptive name, obviously, but for the purposes of demo. And here we can put in the fields that we want to build out for our message. So this is building out an email template, basically. So you would put in dear um, user or display name, and then please click, and we can put the acknowledgement link in there. I can also put a link into the portal link, and we can put from the issuing officer email. So if we click next, we can set some notifications here as well, some issuance notifications.
And I
So
think it's really important to mention, this is a really good point, Peter, actually, that in many places in the world, this is actually a legal requirement. So, for example, in
yes,
Norway, in the Nordics, you have to inform somebody that you're monitoring their communications. Because obviously, ultimately, what you're trying to do is you're trying to gather that evidence.
exactly, exactly. Yes, it's so important to make sure that you've covered yourself, that you're doing everything that you are obliged to do. So we can move on from this now. We can set some optional notifications. We don't have to do these ones, but we can configure some reminders, some escalations if we need to email a manager of the custodian if they've not responded in a timely fashion, so we can configure those as well. And then finally, we can review our settings and make some final changes before we submit them. We can also manage issuing officers as well. So we can add a list of users who can be issuing officers. So we can select people in here who can be that issuing officer for the communication. So we'll pop some people into there as well. So now that we've done all that, we can go back into our eDiscovery case, and we can open it up and go back to communications. Now we can do a new communication. I can now select my issuing officer. So I've got my choices here. I'm logged in as a system admin, so that is automatically included because I'm a eDiscovery administrator, so I can select myself if I want to. And I can now select my new template that I've created as well. And when we click next, we can see the content that we defined in that template there. So we can make a few changes here if we wish to. We can edit that as we go along. We'll leave that as it is. And we can do the same on the notifications. We can make some final edits here on the communication settings for notifications that are required and optional. And here we can choose, this is the really important part, we can choose the custodians that we want to send this to. So we can choose them all, or we can choose one or two of them, and we can add those in to notify them, and then click next and submit.
Very cool.
Yes, and it's that simple, Andy. And once you've done that, they'll get an email and they will get a link to acknowledge it. And then their acknowledgement will appear in the overview page here. So we can see in this communication summary on the overview page, we've sent two notices to two custodians. They've not acknowledged them yet, but when they click on that email and click the link to I hereby acknowledge, you will be able to see that here as well. Lots of amazing stuff within eDiscovery Premium. We've had a look at the data sources, the collections, the review sets, the communications. We can also see in the hold tab the content that we've got on hold. We can see the custodian holds there, and we can see the non-custodial data holds as well. And we can get the little flyout screen just to get some information on those holds as well. The processing tab here that we have will display any processing errors that might occur with anything you export from a review set, you will see in the export area here. So identification or expansion of any embedded objects and attachments and that sort of thing. Under our actions here, we can export what we've selected. We can download it as well. Any redactions that we've applied in our annotation tools, we can commit those to PDFs, which will also create an export job. And we can add these items to another review set. We might want to get that granular, but I was talking about exports, so we can go ahead and create an export name. So we'll just call that export number one. You can put selected documents only, or all filtered documents, or all documents in the review set. And you can expand that selection to include associated family items or conversation items, which is not something we've talked about just yet, actually, but associated family items would describe any attachments that are tied to emails, for example. And the included associated conversation items would describe Teams conversations as an example, because eDiscovery is capable of reconstructing those conversations. So
I was going to say, I don't think a lot of people realize that it does include Teams meetings and things like that as well.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so not only the meeting, but also what you say as well. So, be
Mm.
careful what you say.
Completely do be mindful of that. And then there's the output options. You can just get a report only. If you want to get really advanced, you can get that condensed directory structure exported to your Azure storage account. And you can include any tags and text files and replace redacted natives with converted PDFs. So lots of stuff you can do here, but
This is a beast of a product, isn't it? It
it's
really is.
incredible. It,
Absolute beast. I mean, you look at this product and you don't realize this. I mean, you can imagine that it would be like a dedicated role in the organization.
Oh, yeah, and it really should be.
Yeah.
If in those larger organizations that are highly regulated and are going to be getting a lot of this sort of requirements, and there are organizations I've worked with that do have this. A lot of
Oh yeah.
police forces in the UK and local
Yeah.
authorities and
Government bodies, especially
government.
in the US as well. I think it would be
Exactly.
really popular. Yeah.
Exactly. So we've got a job created now. Any job that you run, any collection that you do, or a review set that you commit, you can see the progress of all of that in your jobs tab here. So you can see it's preparing searches for the collection, it's adding items to the review set, it's applying hold, it's re-indexing data sources. And this one we've got in progress now is the preparing for export. So we can track this job through to its conclusion. And once it's done, once that job is complete, we'll see that in the exports tab. We can already see it there, but it's not complete yet. It's the status is still submitted. So we'll need to wait until that job is completed. Then we can get in and we can see our export. We can download our folders with our content and view that Excel or PSTs or and whatever else. And that leaves us really with the main settings of the case. This is the last tab that we've not really looked at, and this is what we set up when we created the case to begin with, now available within the actual wizard, but previously this wasn't, where you can actually go in and look at the case name, the number, the description, and the status. And this is what flummoxes a lot of people. Sometimes there's the need to delete the case. Where do you find that? You can't just do that from the main page. You've got to come into this case information and go to actions and delete the case from here or close the case from here. And the access and permissions, if you want to give additional folks access to the case, add and remove members or role groups, you can do that from here as well. But again, that can be done from the wizard when you set it up. So we can see that we've already got some members, which I set up when I created the case. And then finally, we've got some search and analytics settings as well, which we can change. We can modify and tweak some of the thresholds for searching for near duplicates and email threading, themes, minimum and maximum number of words. We can ignore text as well. And we can even enable OCR, optical character recognition, set accuracy thresholds for faster or slower speeds for our searches or our collection. Massively powerful. I love this tool so much. If you've got E5, it's a hidden gem.
Absolutely.
It's so cool, and I love it so much.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic, Peter. So absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for that. That was like, wow, that's such a great demo. And you don't realize kind of the power of this tool, do you really? And I'll bet you so many people out there will be, quite surprised here. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me this time. And I really do appreciate you being a guest on my channel. It's fantastic. And we're definitely going to have Peter back again. All right. So fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Andy, so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. I love talking about this subject. I could have gone on more and more. There's so much more to it, but I appreciate you having me on. Thank you so much.
So there you have it. Thanks so much to Peter Rising, host of Cloud Conversations and a fellow MVP. What a nice guy. Hey, I really hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, bump that like button up there. It does make a difference to my channel. And of course, if you've not subscribed, then hey, come on board, bump that subscribe button up there, ring that bell, and you won't miss out on the good stuff in the future. And questions, comments about this or any of my other sessions, of course, just get them down below. Okay, thanks so much for joining me. I'll see you next time. Take care.